Hello, I'm Rachel Brindle. I'm building an electric airplane and this is part of my build log. Last time I covered glassing the fuselage floor. Today I'm covering glassing the fuselage sides. First thing is to rotate the fuselage upright and cut out space for the canard. But what's a canard? Well, I'm building a modified Cozy Mark IV, which is itself a derivative of Burt Rutan's long easy and very easy designs. Unlike most airplanes which have a horizontal stabilizer behind the main wing, these have the horizontal stabilizer at the front. In this configuration, the horizontal stabilizer is also called a canard, and confusingly, the term canard also refers to the configuration or the aircraft itself. In other words, my canard is a canard and it will have a canard. This is not the last time I'll make this joke. But why canard? Doesn't that mean duck? Well, if you look at it, having the main wing in the rear makes it look kind of like a duck stretching out its neck. The French word for duck is used because the 1906 Santos Dumont 14 bis or 14 bis looks a lot like a duck. The 14 bis is not the first canard. In fact, the 1903 Wright Flyer is also a canard, but the 14 bis's resemblance to a duck is much more obvious. Where was I? Right, making the canard cutout. I marked lines indicating where to cut, removing forward of the F-28 bulkhead and only the top 4.1 inches of space. Then cut it out using my oscillating multi-tool. This also includes the ears, I call them, of F-22 because they look kind of like cat ears. These ears only exist to facilitate attaching F-22 to the fuselage sides when constructing the fuselage. Now, they're no longer needed and I can get rid of them. Both sides get cut out because, the canard is going to extend out both sides of the fuselage. Once the canard cutout was made, I focused on contouring the upper fuselage sides. The Cozy plans contain full-size drawings of contour checkers, which I used to make 3D printed sanding blocks based on these contour checkers. I glued 36 grit sandpaper to these sanding blocks and also marked the sections where each sanding block should be used and where to blend from one contour to another. To contour the upper fuselage, I used a combination of my belt sander and the 3D printed sanding blocks I just made. Most of the material was removed using the belt sander, and I frequently grabbed the appropriate 3D printed sanding block to verify I didn't oversand. For the blended sections, I eyeballed it using the nearest appropriate sanding block until it looked nice and smooth. Contouring both sides took an entire day, and I had to take quite a few breaks to cool off and rehydrate myself. That bunny suit I'm wearing does a good job of protecting me from all the dust, but it is not at all breathable. Once the contouring was finished, I rotated the fuselage to have the port side facing up, and I cut fiberglass to prepare for glassing. Both sides get 2 plies of uni fiberglass oriented 30 degrees either way of the upper longerons, and also overlapping 1 ply each with the fuselage floor. After that, the sides get a ply of uni oriented parallel to the upper longerons. This one butts up with the fuselage floor layups but does not overlap. After, there are 3 reinforcement layups along the upper longerons from F-28 to 15 inches forward of the firewall, which for this aircraft is at the aft end of the fuselage. The first reinforcement layup is 5 inches wide, the next 4 inches wide, and the third 3 inches wide. All of these cover the longerons as well as the foam. Additionally, the lower aft part also gets some reinforcing layups over the motor mount, extending onto the fuselage side. 3 plies of uni extending 12, 10, and 8 inches forward from the fuselage. Those then get covered with 2 plies of bid or bidirectional fiberglass, which covers those reinforcement layups as well as the reinforcement layups I added over the motor and gear mount when I glassed the floor. For a standard Cozy, okay, I need to clarify this. With home-built or experimental aircraft, there's no such thing as standard. Every one is slightly different from the other. Every builder will interpret the same instructions differently. The closest to standard is 2 plans, which means that no intentional modifications were made. Back to what I was saying. I'd have also done some work on the fuel sight gauges, but this thing will be electric, and therefore fuel and fuel sight gauges aren't going to be installed. That's right. The only work I've done so far to support electrification is not installing 2 parts. This all took an entire day and it turned out pretty good. Unlike with the floor, I had no issues with it. You might even say that I was floored by how well it turned out. The next day, while the epoxy continued to cure, I prepared to do this again for the starboard side. The starboard side took nearly as long. Both took around 6 hours of glassing. The compound curves made it really hard to get a good pour for spreading using a squeegee, so we mostly stippled, which is using a brush to basically force epoxy into the fiberglass. Stippling works well, but takes much longer and is also much more physically exhausting. The starboard side also went smoothly with no repair needed. Love it when that just works. After the epoxy cured, I trimmed both sides using the oscillating multi-tool, which cut through the fiberglass like it's butter. That tool is so great. I cannot imagine the pain that was knife trimming that people had to do before these tools became available. That and electric scissors are the 2 tools I consider essential for fiberglass work. electric scissors for before the glass is cured, and the multi-tool for after. And that's the fuselage exterior. The fuselage is now at its full strength. Next up is working more on the interior of the fuselage. Headrests, electrical duct, seatbelt attach points, and so on. I'm really looking forward to the break from large layouts by making a bunch of smaller parts. Thank you so much for watching. I'm still very early on to this multi-year project. I'm maybe 15% done with this, I think. I hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you, have a great day.